Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Big Ten Mafia Show. I have returned. I am your host, Sergeant Pickles, and with me, as always, the national champion from the Ohio State Buckeyes, Mr. Moen. How are we doing, my champion friend?
We're doing good. I brought a friend with me today.
There we go. Just keep that
Right
baby in
there.
your pocket and whip it out when everyone wants to have arguments with you.
Big number 9. It's hard to hear over a national championship trophy. Hard to hear. So I went to the celebration yesterday in Columbus. It was pretty fun down there at the shoe. Saw a lot of people, a lot of friends. A lot of fun was had. A lot of dignitaries were there, like Andrew Ginther and Mike Wine. Um, two of my least favorite people, but they were there, so I got to see them too. So, um, yeah, still kind of lost in the afterglow, as it were.
Oh, I love it. You're still celebrating with the best of them, although we've had to recover and go to work, I'm sure. Becky is not with us today. She tagged out for me as I was off. I appreciate everyone being patient with us, but life goes on. But I couldn't miss it. I couldn't miss it for my friend to celebrate a championship. Although there's nothing better than your team winning one, but seeing your good friends accomplish their dreams and do it over a hated Midwestern rival is a thing in itself. I got to say, Moen, there's only one thing that remains in my mind. Is Ryan Day still on the hot seat?
No, no.
Michigan, man, I'm telling you, he's got to
Uh,
win that game or he's out next year.
no. He's about to become probably the highest paid coach in college football.
I
So
would I would certainly think that's in the cards for him here. Quick hello to everyone that joined us early. Conundrum. We can touch on ACC contract briefly, but it is coming up. National championship afterglow is still among us for the Buckeye fans, but we're rolling right into the offseason. I mean, it turns that quick. We appreciate you being here, Conundrum. Daniel Gygax, contributor and friend over on the Big 12 Mafia show. Hello. Bob Swenger, Mr. Penn State. Hello. I got to say, we'll get into this, but man, Penn State, they're loaded up for next year. They are all in and got all sorts of players returning. They're coming after that national championship. So exciting things going on over in Happy Valley. Caleb Ramirez, your Buckeye brother. Cheers to you, my friend. Enjoy it. I got to say, unfortunately, I haven't seen Washington win a championship in my lifetime. At this rate, I might never, because last year was as close as we've gotten in quite a while. But hey, enjoy it while you can. That's all I'll say. Even for Ohio State, you never know when you're going to win the next one.
and well, hey, listen, you guys have won one more recently than say Notre Dame.
That is correct. That is correct. Unfortunately, I don't think it was this millennium, but we're working on it. Good things going on at Washington. We're in the Big Ten, and nothing but up from here, right? Clint Moses, our Beaver friend. All hail the Big Ten, the good guys. I mean, I've seen some people compare Big Ten and SEC as like pick your favorite Stalin or Hitler, but I appreciate you being here, Clint, and cheering for us as our fellow former Pac-12 brethren.
I like to think of it as Tony Montana from Scarface, the restaurant scene. Say
Dig
good
it.
night to the bad guy, man. You need me. You need me.
Beautiful. Illini Ted, good evening, my friend. Nitwit, another Penn State Nittany Lion. Yeah, they're already discussing Penn State football. We appreciate you guys being here, even though you're going to have a Buckeye gloating the remainder of the night. But once again, it comes and goes so quickly, Mo. And I swear we were just talking about season previews and getting into it, and it's all smiles and everyone's excited for the season, and it's over. Boom, like that. It's all done. What's your biggest takeaway outside of the Ohio State part of it? What do you think about the season?
Oh boy, they need to work on the scheduling.
Yeah,
It's too long. The college football season should not take into January 25th. They need to move up the season. I don't care if you compete with preseason NFL. I just don't want to compete with regular season or playoff NFL.
yeah. I'll I'm definitely interested in putting out a standalone schedule video for you guys. We're definitely going to transition to more pre-recorded content throughout the summer. Videos will come out different days of the week, but the Big 12 guys and Big Freaking Friday show will still go live every week as scheduled. I have very strong thoughts about how they should fix college football scheduling in terms of what weeks, what happens. I don't think they'll ever do it, but I don't see why college football couldn't compete with NFL preseason. Like if you're not going to watch college football in favor of NFL preseason, then you were never going to watch college football to start with. So we're not fighting for your eyeballs. I don't know why they don't just own that period before NFL completely fires up. But I guess at the end of the day, the NCAA still likes giving away free money. I see a couple of guys in chat already talking about it, Moen, but not to switch too hard off of the celebration, but it moves like clockwork. Jim Knowles, greater than Tom Allen. We have Tom Allen leaving for Clemson on a $3 million, like more than a good portion of head coaches are making. And they replace him with a Buckeye. We got Jim Knowles going from Ohio State to Penn State, I'm sure for a pretty penny. What are your feelings about this particular hire from both Penn State and Ohio State perspectives?
Good for Penn State. I mean, they're going all in on next season. They needed to get a defensive coordinator in there. Jim Knowles is a good defensive coordinator. I have some issues with some of the stuff that was said today, but we'll get into that. But Jim Knowles is a very good defensive coordinator. But their problem wasn't their defense in the playoffs. The problem was their offense.
Right.
I mean, they couldn't scheme a pass to a wide receiver in that game against Notre Dame. And not like Ohio State had any problem in that department.
No, I think honestly, I mean, I like Drew Aller. I think he's a good quarterback. However, I do think he has limitations as a passer. I don't think I'm going out there to say that. I mean, they relied heavily on the run, and it served them well the majority of the year. But Notre Dame just clamped down on that line, and you got to adjust and have an answer. I understand this is the defensive side of the ball, but yeah, Penn State, I'm excited for you. I think it was a good hire, but a good hire for Penn State is maintaining that already excellent level of defense. When their edge rusher always escapes my mind, but you guys like him, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. You got to reload and keep it going. Just quick initial thoughts. Do you think Penn State is able to kind of carry this into the next season and maintain that high level?
I don't think the issue is ever going to be their defense.
Right.
I think you slot anybody. It's Penn State. Your linebacker, you're Abdul Carter.
That's the name. There we go.
Micah Parsons. I mean, there's so many great linebackers and defensive linemen that come out of that program. I don't think defense was the issue.
Right.
Wide receiver is the issue. Wide receiver coach, I think, is also the issue. We have to see how they're going to do there. Again, great hire for Penn State. I did not like the fact that Jim Knowles had his agent run to Brett McMurphy first thing this morning.
Right.
And start airing grievances. Could have left in a little bit better way. Could have just said so long, farewell. Been good for you, been good for me. Unfortunately, it couldn't be left that way, but he'll get a chance. He's got to play Ohio State, I believe, the first week of November this season. So,
yes, indeed. Looks like Ohio State's coming off a bye, and that'll be a fun game. I think that's definitely going to be the highlight games coming up next year. Ohio State and Penn State both coming off of byes, and that one is being played in Happy Valley. So they're going to talk about it all week. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a college game day type game going into it.
That doesn't seem to be that can't be Happy Valley. I think it's got to be because we played in Happy Valley this season, I thought.
Let's see. Home game, away game. At least in the pockets get. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong columns here. Yes, it is at Columbus in the shoe. Penn State traveling to Columbus, but you're both coming off a bye, so there's no excuses there. It'll be an interesting one. On a Washington note, because I'm going to throw my purple glasses on, the Penn State #1 receiver who only had, I think, 400 something yards on the season is now at UW. and seems like a talented kid. Obviously, their scheme wasn't designed to have 1,000-yard receivers. That's not me just taking a shot at Penn State. I mean, you know who you are. You run the ball. It's all good. But I'm thankful to have him at Washington. And yeah, I think Penn State, they go as far as Drew Aller and the scheme takes them. That's where I think they are heading into next year. Oh, goodness. Where was I coming up? But there are other coaching changes, obviously, in the Big Ten. We're going to kind of wait for the dust to settle. There's going to be spring portal, et cetera, and a lot more changes, I'm sure. Like, for example, Washington had a safeties coach that was hired at Jacksonville State, only for him to be hired away 2 weeks later to North Carolina. So as the revolving doors turn in college football, I don't think anything's settled until that first kickoff, really. Mo, and SEC Big Ten joint meetings, February 19th. I know when this was announced, all the other conferences and fans kind of waved their hands in the air about, oh no, this is the Super League meeting. Do you think Super League is upon us, or is this just much to do about nothing?
This is Dunkin' Donuts and Krispy Kreme. They're getting together. Dunkin' Donuts in the north, Krispy Kreme in the south. I think that's what we're looking at. I think the Big Ten and SEC getting together, getting the scheduling agreement pounded out, figuring out what position they each want to take in the new changes to the college football playoff format. Just a meeting of the minds for everybody to come to an agreement.
Okay. Right on.
More than anything else. I don't think they're breaking away. They're going to have to guarantee access to the playoff for the Big 12 and the ACC and the PAC and the other G6 schools.
Right. I mean, at the earliest, due to TV contracts, I think that, if you're talking breakaway, that's what, 2030, 2031, right in there when both conferences are negotiating a TV contract, because it'd have to be done in tandem to really function correctly. I definitely think that there's possibility of a joint scheduling agreement, although with all the SEC whinging about we should just cancel all our non-conference opponents, even though that wasn't really their problem. Maybe there will be some apprehension from SEC coaches. But, for example, as at Ohio State's playing Texas this year, I think Michigan, or isn't, there's one more game that was Big Ten versus SEC in the non-conference coming up this year.
Texas, Ohio State.
Yeah, and Michigan, Oklahoma also.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously those were scheduled before they joined the SEC, but they're carrying on. I know Washington's playing Tennessee at home and home coming up in the next few years. It would be fairly straightforward to buy out one of your G5 or FCS games and replace that with an SEC game. I've long thought, I wish the Pac-12 had done this with the Big Ten, because it might have actually saved our conference. But I think your number one finishing team in the regular season, because the playoff is kind of its own thing. Your number one team should host the number 9 team from the conference the previous year, and so on and so forth. I mean, you could have a game in Atlanta and a game in Vegas as like a kickoff classic, but the 1 versus 9, 2 versus 10, and so on, play Big Ten versus SEC, and the 2 teams in the Big Ten that finish at the very bottom just keep their G5 games. I think that'd be a lot of fun. It'd almost be like in basketball, how you have the SEC Big Ten Challenge Cup. You think there's any future in that for just a direct head-to-head battle to start the season?
I see what you're saying, but I think if they're going to invest their media partners, obviously Fox and ESPN, they're going to invest in that kind of money. They want firework matchups.
Yeah. Ohio State, Bama, Michigan, Texas.
Yeah. They want to get the marquee brands
Oregon,
together.
LSU.
But I mean, hey, even Northwestern versus Vanderbilt, that'd be a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, I try to apply logic to illogical situations where you just go off rankings, because that's how I like to see things. But yeah, they're gonna want firework matchups. I don't know, maybe the network. It's like maybe it could be such as like the bowl system where the networks just have a selection order. They just draft them like you do when you played dodgeball as a kid, going down the list. And unfortunately, teams like Purdue will get picked last. But such is life, Boilermaker friends. Yeah, I could see it, but do you think that's really an improvement over what they have now when they just schedule their own games and you get Ohio State, Texas, and Wisconsin, Alabama? etc.
Here's the problem though. Not everybody in the Big Ten schedules that way.
Right.
Not everybody in the SEC schedules that way. You will get the rare, where it's a conference affiliation like we did with the Las Vegas kickoff game this year between USC and LSU.
Right.
USC, even though they won that game, was desperately trying to back out of that game. So I think because you don't have uniform scheduling, I think, yeah, why not put that out there? Make some let's make sure, Michigan did play Texas this year, but the year of their national championship trophy, a lot was made about how soft their out of conference schedule was.
Yeah, I think that there is more incentive to do it because obviously it's going to be a huge draw for the teams involved in the conference as far as TV eyeballs. You probably get a premium for signing up for big time games like that. It does make scheduling for teams such as UFC or USC that have like a fixed Notre Dame non-conference. Their schedule is suddenly extremely tough year in, year out if they're doing that all the time. But the expanded playoff gives you that margin of error where maybe that is your tiebreaker to make, the 10, 11, 12 spots to say, look at how tough our schedule was. And, we picked up a loss or two in there, but, we're playing against other teams that are playoff contenders. So, pros and cons, I guess. I certainly say in the 4-team era, they'd be a lot more apprehensive to not do it because you're, 2 losses and done essentially. I think overall the 12-team playoff is a good thing, and I hope it does lead to more power on power non-conference.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there. You'll get 8 games for each media partner throughout the season, and I'd like to see them played. I don't want to see them all at the beginning of the year.
Right.
I'd like to see those games played as marquee matchups throughout the season.
Yeah, that's a tough balance to strike because I don't know if you want Ohio State suddenly playing Georgia in, week 11 down the stretch. I mean, maybe you do. But I think when you get into the meat of your conference schedule, you just kind of want to keep finishing out the conference. But I could see it like a lot of teams are playing non-conference games kind of weeks 1 through 5, more like usually 1 through 4, but there's a couple in there. Like Notre Dame USC is played kind of mid-season, just as I'm looking at pocket schedule. Yeah, mix them up. Don't make them all week 1. You're just going to oversaturate it. I say spread them out maybe across those first 4 or 5 weeks, and you'd have a lot of really good matchups. Saw another name pop in real quick. Got to go back up. Clayton Dalry, MPLE. I apologize. I don't know how to spell that. Wisconsin, Alabama, mentioning another matchup there. And Skaven, yes, stopping in. Hello, my friend. Appreciate having you here. Beyond that, Mo, and I posed it to you before we hopped on the show, but kind of season in review, some teams finished higher or lower. Our predictions were reasonably close, I think, compared to the big Mafia teams' standings at the beginning of the year. But going into 2026 compared to this past season, what's one team you expect to take that next jump forward and get an extra 2-3 wins? And what's a team you expect to take a step back?
Oh, I think I'm going to take Iowa as a team to step forward. I think
really, okay.
Again, they're a really good team now, just with their defense. I think they can possibly, with the new offensive tools, maybe get another 1 or 2 wins. Put them in contention for the Big Ten championship. As far as a team taking a step back, I'd say probably Minnesota. I'd look at Minnesota taking a step back. Okay. Honorable mention would be Illinois. Not for stepping back, but moving forward.
Right. PJ Fleck's got them magic mayo powers now. They're rowing the boat through a lake of mayonnaise. They'll be fine. Those are both good calls. I mean, like, for example, this last year, the Indianas came out of nowhere. I think I'm going to pick them to take a step back, not because I think they're just going to fall off, but, you're a 2-loss team. A step back to 3 or 4 losses is still an excellent season, but it is a step back. I think Kurt Cignetti's still an outstanding coach. He was flying with a lot of those guys he brought over from James Madison. And he has the opportunity to really step it up and, utilize portal, NIL, and build a sustainable thing where he's not just kind of a one-season wonder. Owen, I got to say it. I'm sorry. But I do think Sherrod Moore and Michigan get somewhere between 9 and 10 wins. They're just too talented. I do have questions about quarterback, even with Bryce Underwood coming in, because as you saw with Dylan Raiola, you see moments of greatness and moments of you're a boneheaded freshman. Michigan will live and die by how good their quarterback is, but they're still supremely talented. Like a 7-win Michigan team is kind of their floor in the NIL era, in my opinion. Other than that, I think everyone's I don't see too many huge swings. There will be surprises in there. This is just our way too early where we think teams might shake out and trying to predict the next Indiana that takes a huge step. Conundrum saying 1 year with Fleck and he's off to the Canes. Oh my gosh. Call Rock and Rant.
Yeah,
Call Rock and Rant right now and get his thoughts on that.
That's he's talking about the defensive coordinator, which Minnesota has lost defensive coordinators in back-to-back years now. But I mean, the only thing that gives me a question about Michigan, I know they think they've dodged a bullet on Wink Martindale getting hired away. Obviously the Bengals replaced with Al Golden out of Notre Dame, and Indianapolis replaced with Lou Anarumo, who is from Cincinnati, and Atlanta Falcons replaced. There still could be an opening in the NFL for a defensive coordinator.
Right.
So I want to be for sure that Martindale is staying before I'm sure Michigan's defense will be good, but with Martindale scheming it, it's great.
Yeah, I think it's just that extra piece of magic that really kind of makes the engine go.
Yeah.
All right. I can see that for sure. Kind of getting into some more off the beaten path topics. I just want to touch them as we're rolling down. UCLA, they got issues. They had a $30 million basically loan given to them by their own campus. And I bring that up not to kind of dunk on the Bruins because they have all sorts of budget issues, but I've seen this. I don't know if this is accurate. I mean, take all the numbers with a grain of salt, but something like Ohio State operated with a $30 million deficit this year. Moen, what do you take away from that? Do you think that's accurate? And is this commonplace across the country?
It's 100% accurate, but it's another one of these things where, and I hate this with the media, people see the headline, they don't read the article.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you.
Right. You see the headline, and then everybody on Twitter reacts, see, they paid too much for their team, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what happens when you pay players. The football program ran a 30-some million surplus that fiscal year. Yeah. It's the rest of the athletic department. And there's lots of reasons why. One of them was we only had 6 football games at home that year. That's one less game for ticket sales. Ticket sales were also down because it's not affordable for the common fan to go see an Ohio State game anymore. In addition, we had a $10 million buyout for our men's basketball coach. That factors in there. So it's hard with an athletic department that big to get your hands on a budget from year to year and expect to make it work. Obviously they expected a little more revenue coming in, a little less came in. And obviously the expenses went up with that buyout, having to add staff. So it's just one of those things. It's just a pet peeve of mine where people just see the headline, make a assumption from the headline, and that becomes the narrative. Lots of athletic departments run deficits. Ohio State's run surplus for many of their years. Don't be shocked. Penn State. I see a lot of Penn State people in the chat. Penn State athletic department will run a deficit from time to time. UCLA's problem is UCLA consistently ran a deficit.
Yes.
That's when you have a problem, when you're consistently running a deficit.
Yeah, UCLA, unfortunately, even before the Calamoni thing, which I'm sure they have to put on their books, UCLA consistently ran a deficit. And then their whole deal with the Rose Bowl, they essentially don't take a full cut of like in-stadium ticket sales revenue and concessions revenue because of that deal with the Rose Bowl. It's not like any other college team in that sense. So they're just kind of in a tough situation, and they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road with loans. Yeah, Ohio State, I mean, it makes perfect sense. They're a lot like Stanford, for example. I bet you Stanford's in the negative because these are the kind of teams pushing for directors' cups. You're playing sports at every level, both men's and women's. You're racking up all sorts of NCAA championships and various things. That's expensive. And, there's only two sports that basically generate any revenue. Yeah, it's not shocking to see that it's at a deficit, but as I said to you, I waited to hear your exact explanation because I know I'm just as prone to reading the headline and saying, "Oh, that's weird," and moving on as anybody else.
And keep in mind, I think Ohio State has more varsity programs than any other athletic department in the country. I believe they have 37 or 38 total
which is
varsity
insane
programs, which is a lot. There's over 1,000 student athletes within the Ohio State system.
Yeah, Washington's considered a big school with a lot of sports, and I think we're somewhere in the low 20s, like 21, 22 sports, something like that. And we have weird things like, crew that nobody else does. So just imagine how many sports we don't have compared to a Stanford or Texas or Ohio State. It's pretty wild. I guess the throw on to that would be, do you think some of these schools, even at the level of Ohio State, are going to be able to sustain that with NIL and revenue and everything going forward? Can they keep running those level of varsity athletes?
It's going to be dependent on the donations they get from boosters. Athletic departments, at least in Ohio State's case, they don't take tax money. They don't take tuition revenue.
Right.
Everything is funded from the actual programs themselves or through donations and boosters. Listen, if you got to take $22.5 million off of your books every year and pay it to players, you're gonna have to make that up. That's a new expense. You're gonna have to make that up somehow.
Right.
So, I mean, some sports might get cut. It's just nature of the beast.
I was even thinking partially through the lens of Title IX because I've seen that legislation and I could have a flawed understanding of it, but as I read it, they're kind of implying that Title IX then also would have to apply to NIL, which would completely break the system. I think it would just be non-functional. So how do you think they navigate that if for some reason our government is prone to do strange things at times, that they could legislate their way into forcing schools, well, I would say probably public schools in particular, that they have to have even NIL? How do you think they get around that or navigate that?
I think the same way the NFL navigates it, they're going to get an antitrust exemption from the government. And they're going to be allowed to do this. Some people are going to complain about it, and they're not going to be necessarily wrong to complain about it, but it's going to be what it's going to be. Bread and circuses control the mob, as does football.
Absolutely. Conundrum, absolutely smash that like button, like, comment, subscribe, become a channel member. We're pumping out all sorts of members-only content. Wild Ute University is in full swing. He's been doing his comparative series where he takes a conference and looks at prospective members and does a full analytical deep dive. He just recently did Memphis to the Pac-12, if I'm not mistaken. And they shaped up far better than I thought they would. I'll put it that way. But if you want to check out that content, please become a channel member. It really supports us, helps keeps the light on. We can bring you more great content, especially going into the whole wheel of realignment that kicks off every single offseason. Kind of backtracking a little bit. I'm all over the place today, but here we are. Oh, shoot, is it not doing it? There we go. College football TV ratings. I know there was some hand wringing and SEC fans dunking on because neither of the last two championship games reached the heights of the Alabama-Georgia and Alabama-Clemson days. Although my kind of perspective look at this is obviously there's a big spread across the board game to game, but you add all that up together, that is an insane amount of eyeballs on screens in a 4-week period for college football. Do you think the TV networks are calling this a win, Moen, or do they want to see a little higher numbers?
Well, I'm sure ESPN's calling it a win because they ran enough damn commercials during all of them.
Yeah.
But, again, we've got to make sure when we're comparing things, we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Last year's title game was in the first or second week of January. This
True.
year's title game took place on Martin Luther King Day after a presidential inauguration. There was a lot of stuff going on. By the way, after the divisional round of the NFL playoffs too, there's a lot of stuff that was going on before that. In addition to that, I think they probably should simulcast some of these games. I get that ESPN's
Yeah.
bought the rights. The national championship game should be broadcast nationally.
At a minimum, it should be sent out to local affiliates. I mean, the fact you have any restrictions on that just because ESPN wants to own everything when it comes to the college football playoff, like, variety or, multiple parties is always better for the consumer. I don't know, the monopoly style where one company bids on the entire thing and they don't break it up is not the way to go in the future. But we'll see what Disney ESPN wants to offer up when the next set of negotiation comes around. I have a feeling it's not going to stick at 12, even though some could argue that the viewership numbers tail off as you add more and more games.
It's true, but actually look at some of the numbers here. Big Ten teams did very, very well for themselves in the numbers. In
Correct.
particular, Ohio State. Ohio State had the two highest rated games in the entire playoff. I believe three of the highest rated. So,
Yep. Ohio State, Oregon drew more than Ohio State, Texas, which is kind of interesting, in my opinion. I mean, is that kind of more just the Ohio State factor? I mean, you were the highest viewed in the first round, easily the highest viewed quarterfinal and semifinal, and then the championship to cap it off. Like, I think the three highest games in total were the final three Ohio State games. Could you argue that, the Big Ten's a draw, or is that just Ohio State has a massive fan base and alumni all over the country?
well, Ohio State does have a massive fan base, but you've also got a massive hater base.
True.
And the same is true for Oregon.
Yep.
Oregon and Penn State. I'm sure there's lots of people who don't like Penn State, but but you got to keep in mind here, guys. Ohio State Oregon took place on New Year's Day.
Yep.
It's a Rose Bowl game.
It's the Rose Bowl.
Texas Ohio State took place on a Friday night, which is a tough time slot to go up against on a Friday night. People are out and about doing things. And the national championship game took place on a Monday. That was a federal holiday. That was also an inauguration day that took place after the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. It's a lot to pack into a tight window. And again, just to me, like if the Super Bowl was on Amazon Prime, people would be up in arms. If the Super Bowl was even on ESPN, people would be up in arms. I don't understand why we can't have the national championship game broadcast nationally.
On the other hand, though, if the Super Bowl was simulcast on cable channels plus Prime or cable channels plus Netflix, whatever, people would love it because it's an additional option for them.
Sure, and I'd have no issue with that, but I think that you should be able in America to turn on the TV and see who wins the college football national championship. Shouldn't need a cable package, shouldn't need internet. If you've got an antenna or save that, if you've got a coat hanger and some tin foil and you know what you're doing and you use that little UHF tuner properly, you should be able to see the college football national championship game. That's just me. Yeah. To me, it's American, it's football. That's just the way it should be.
Yeah, I could understand them wanting to do a little gatekeeping on the earlier rounds and everything, but yeah, for the culmination of an entire season, you want as much exposure as you can possibly get. So I definitely get that. Bob Swanger, who I assume is also a Steelers fan, said Penn State game went direct up against the Steelers game. You can't do that. I'm sorry. You're going to lose out every time. Even Ohio State, if you put them head to head against a mid-level NFL game, it's going to take a chunk out of their viewership. It just is. Yeah. That's the nature of the beast when you have the 10,000-pound gorilla that is the NFL. Like the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to get games that are going to beat the majority of college football games in terms of viewership. So you don't totally concede to them. I don't like this idea that you just acquiesce to the NFL at every turn, but you can get more creative than they are. I know other people have joined me on this train, but one of my pound the table hard stop moments. The national championship should be on New Year's Day every year. It doesn't have to be the Rose Bowl. I would love it if it was. The national championship should take place on New Year's Day every year.
If you're going to do that, you have to move up the start of the college football season to the first week of August.
Correct.
Which I have no problem with. I think that's a great idea. If you're watching preseason NFL, you're watching it for the first series when your starters are in there. Nobody watches the rest of it. I mean, unless you want to go to sleep, nobody's betting on preseason NFL football. That's a perfect opportunity. But college football is going to have to get their hands around that idea of, but it used to be that way. I used to remember college football kicking off in August for the most part.
I do as well. I mean, the double buys and everything, and I hate week 0. It's not week. Just call it week 1. Learn how to count. We're supposed to be in college, people. I will do it on my video and kind of map it out week by week and exactly what needs to be done. They won't do it because it makes too much sense, but they could absolutely fit in an entire season with conference championships, with 3 rounds plus the national championship and get it done by New Year's Day. But that's what we used to always do, right? Before there was even BCS and all this, New Year's Day was the culmination of the college football season. You knew when it was. You had multiple games going on, but even if for example, you and I, the Rose Bowl was appointment viewing, right? Even if your team wasn't in it, it was the Rose Bowl. You always watched it, and it was the culmination of the season. So I'm a traditionalist in that I kind of like that, but I'm sure even SEC fans talking about the Sugar Bowl, same thing. You knew that was the ultimate decider for your conference in that season. I think we've lost a little bit of that magic, but you can make adjustments and have the playoff culminate in the same way where you're not dragging it on and interfering with all sorts of other stuff. The mistake to me was that the NFL's already been stepping on toes when they started scheduling these Saturday playoff games. They just basically threw college football the finger and said, yeah, I don't care. I'm bigger than you anyway, and I'm just going to take your Saturdays when now it matters the most. We're just going to override you. And
to be fair, there is a broadcasting act that prevents the NFL from airing a Saturday game before a certain date.
True.
That date is now in conflict with college football games because of the expanded playoff.
Right.
That's
before
before it never mattered. You would occasionally get that one odd NFL game that appeared on January 1st, but I mean, it's just gonna. You're right. They need to fix the scheduling because it's too late in the season to be worrying about the college football national championship. It should be, and I'm not going to say it has to be on the first or it has to be the Rose Bowl, but it's got to be that first week of January.
Yeah, you can't drag it into the NFL playoffs.
Yeah.
By the time you get to divisional and conference championship NFL weeks, you're losing out on them, even if it's not on the same day, because all the attention and focus is on the NFL season by that point.
Right.
Yeah, you got to highlight your star, make your big moment. Like, just understand the more you intertwine and overlap the NFL, the more you're just kind of getting lost in the noise. As you can tell, I'm massively in favor of shifting the entire season up if you have to. And you make a good point when, back in January or even late December, when they used to have those conflicts, like, oh no, the Saturday NFL game is going against the Boca Raton Bowl or the Bahamas Bowl. Like nobody, those fans will watch, but like everyone else is probably watching NFL if they're interested. So the bigger the playoff gets, the more in conflict you're going to be. And that includes if they expand it to 14 or 16 teams, because you got to slot those games in all in the same week. Shout out to my friend Gerard Jones, your fellow Buckeye national champions. Cheers to you, my friend. Long-suffering Buckeyes, man. You got to that decade mark. It just felt like it was never going to end, I'm sure.
I've heard it all from you, Pickles. Listen, 10 years it's not like Ohio State racked up national championships like Alabama.
Nope.
We win one since the turn of the millennium. We win one about every 10 years. So we were due.
I mean, Washington's a proud program with much history, but Moen, we haven't won one in my entire lifetime, and I'm not a young man these days. So Just know how I get it. Just enjoy it. Cheers to you, but just know how good you got it, guys. That's all I'm saying. Just appreciate it. Because some of us will never see one in our lifetimes. Actually, the majority of us will not. But
got to drop that
such
money.
is life. Yeah, such is life. But it's always cool. I think it was a good game. I mean, I guess we didn't talk about the game much. I mean, you guys went over it on the Friday show and everything. But credit to Notre Dame. I know we're not supposed to be throwing flowers the way of a non-conference member, but Notre Dame fought back. Marcus Freeman, he's an outstanding coach. And you can claim him, Owen. He's a Buckeye, so that's why he's an outstanding coach, correct?
Sure, we'll go with that. He said some not so nice things about Ohio State and then backtracked on it, but we'll forgive him that.
There's some weird tendencies of former Buckeyes not being not so nice about their alma mater for some reason. You can support Notre Dame and still be, cordial and polite to Ohio State. So I don't know why, but Marcus Freeman's an outstanding coach. I mean, whether he goes NFL or stays at Notre Dame, I expect him to have success wherever he's at. For the Irish, I mean, yeah, they're capable. As long as they're winning 10 plus games, they got a seat reserved for them on the college football playoff bus. That's just the way it is. So no excuses for them not to be back in a championship game soon. That's all I'm going to say for my Irish friends out there. Shonsky stopping by, one of our Big 12 friends. Heard it's hot in the South to start the season in August. Have you heard anything like this? Indeed, we have. Can you do it on a hot night in Tuscaloosa, Moen? That's what everyone wants to know.
I'd do it. Wouldn't bother me. I mean, it's not like it's Arctic temperatures here in August. It's just as humid and sticky up here in the north. So I totally get that, but we've got to do something. We cannot have what happened this year keep happening, because it's not gonna be good for us. It's not going to be good for fans of the sport. It's not going to be good for the business people of the sport. I don't think it's good for the teams of the sport. So we've got to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, half the time when they're doing those kickoff games, they put them inside in like the Falcon Stadium or the Mercedes Superdome. So there's ways you could work around it if that's legitimately a concern. But half of those early SEC games are being played in 100-degree heat. So, I mean, Big Ten fans, or Big Ten teams rather, are not allowed to complain going south when there was a lot of trash talking about SEC teams coming north. I mean, that door swings both ways, in my opinion. I'm just enjoying my mild weather out here on the West Coast, where it, is basically 30 to 80 temperature range year round. It's actually not too bad. Moen, I'm not going to lie. I've been out of the loop a little bit. Just a personal programming note for everyone. I appreciate you enduring my absence. And thank you, Moen, for holding the show together while I wasn't here. But I completed my CNC electronic technician apprenticeship with a particular well-known Seattle-based aerospace company. So I got a fancy pay raise and a little bit more free time to spend with the family and hang out with you great people. So appreciate you giving me. Yep.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said, let him cook.
Congratulations, I appreciate it. Pickles. Congratulations.
Get a little bit of a pay bump and, one more big thing to check off. But I'll leave the cooking to my wonderful wife. She's much better at it than I am. I'm lucky if I don't burn a pot of top ramen. Stopping by a little late, but hello, Ed Weiner, my friend. Good to see you. We're just chatting a little season wrap up, and time flies when you're having fun. We've definitely been having a lot of fun here. Moen, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what else there much is to talk about the season. I'm sure we have all sorts of content coming forward in the off season. Scheduling and realignment wheel is just getting fired up as always, but I don't know what much else to say about the season that was and the national championship Buckeyes. What do you got?
It's been a long season. I think that's why. I think if this season would have wrapped 3 weeks ago, I think we'd all be fired up still. It's just kind of drug on and on and on. But yeah,
it has.
I mean, it's a long season. A lot of people had Ohio State picked to win it all. Then the Michigan game happened, and we all thought they were out of it. And then they came back and were able to win. So If you picked Ohio State to begin the season, congratulations. I know Ohio State is also a favorite for next season, as is Penn State, as they should be. Congratulations to Penn State on getting that hire. You certainly paid out the nose for it. Now get some wide receivers in there, guys, because you got to do something with the passing game.
Man, Penn State with wide receivers is like having a Ferrari, but a kid who doesn't have a license. Like, what are they going to do with them? Don't ask your 5-star wide receivers to block. Come on, Penn State.
Listen, and Kotelnicki, I think, did a great job scheming the offense this year for Penn State. It's just, I don't understand why they can't develop wide receivers.
I mean, I'm trying to think of, this isn't me taking shots at Penn State, but you play a particular brand of football. I'm just trying to think of the last time they had a true gunslinger quarterback that could actually, that's what the heartbeat of their offense was. And I'm not going to lie, no one comes to mind in the recent decade or so. I don't know if that's by design or otherwise.
Drew Aller's a fantastic quarterback. Watch that USC game. They are down by 2 touchdowns, and Drew Aller throws them back into that game. I just don't no offense to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You guys shouldn't have been in the championship game. Penn State should have beat you. Even not throwing to a wide receiver, they should have beat you. It was an insane twist of luck, and I think a bad coaching decision by James Franklin that allowed Notre Dame to get into the championship game. This should have been a Penn State-Ohio State national championship.
Notre Dame's defense did carry them through those last 3 games of the playoff. They did play extremely well. Notre Dame's defense was the reason that they had any shot to come back in the national championship at all, because Ohio State was just lighting them up, after that first drive where they went down and scored. So, as for Penn State, Drew Aller is a fantastic quarterback, but I don't think he can win games with his arm. I understand what you said about USC, but I have a long history with USC and their secondary, so I have particular thoughts about it. But
I would just counter that real quick, Pickles, by saying this. There was a kid that got picked up from Kansas State last year that everybody said could not win a national championship. That the Buckeyes missed out on Dylan Gabriel, Cam Ward, all these other great quarterbacks, and they let Kyle McCord walk in favor of a kid named Will Howard, who couldn't even get the starting job at Kansas State, by the way, was benched at Kansas State. That man is now a national champion.
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing what you can do when you surround good players with all the talent they need. That's not me taking a shot at him, but, they gave him the tools to go out there and succeed, and he definitely made the throws when he needed. That absolute moonshot to Jeremiah Smith was wild to watch live, just because it kind of came out of nowhere based on how the game flow was going, but that was virtually the dagger in the heart of the Irish as he brought that pass down for, 30, 40 yards or something like that. It was incredible. So made the plays when he needed to. Ohio State absolutely deserving. I'd challenge anyone to say that the winner of a 12-team playoff is not the deserving national champion. And I think it's worth pointing out that both Ohio State and Notre Dame would have been left out of the 4-team version. So
right.
I remain very adamant all along that eight or more was the way to go. I'm glad that we're here for all the pros and cons of the expanded playoff. But once again, shout out to my Buckeye friends in the chat and national champions, the Ohio State. Mullen, a little bit of a short show here. We can get everyone out early for the rest of the week. What is your one for the road?
Oh, we need to do a one for the road overlay.
Yep.
My one for the road is I don't have anything bad to say about Jim Knowles. I do have stuff bad to say about his agent. Again, there's a way you handle things. I think running to a little sawed-off shit like Brett McMurphy to spill your guts.
Oh, no.
First thing before even noon, after you get, a big contract, you should be celebrating instead of coming back and whining and crying and saying that they prevented Knowles from coming to the celebration. He couldn't celebrate with his players. Knowles celebrated with his players in the locker room. Knowles celebrated with his players at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Because of the coaching thing that was going on, they just didn't want him to be the center of attention when those kids and the fans should have been celebrating in Columbus. it was not a situation where they were doing it to be punitive to Jim Knowles. It was a situation where they were trying to put the focus on the kids. So, again, good on you, Jim Knowles' agent. I'm sure you just made a boatload of money off your commission, but no need to run to Brett McMurphy because we know it all came from you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the way that is. I mean, I have a lot more respect for coaches that they kind of let the team have their moment, et cetera, et cetera. Even if you wait 24 hours after, just do the right thing by the kids and the team. Like, you can have the agreement on paper in the background, but just let the team be the focus and celebrate and all that. You don't want to go out with a sour taste in your mouth, but it is what it is. Onward and upward for Ohio State, and I'm sure they'll hire pretty much their pick of the litter from whoever's left out there as a DC. So my one for the road is, if they couldn't do it at Washington, I'm glad they still ended up champions. Shout out to G. Scott Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and JT Tuimalau. Growing up here in the greater Seattle area, Emeka Egbuka's high school is actually about 20 miles from where I'm sitting right now. So if they couldn't do it at UW, it's a bummer. I was pretty sad when we lost out on their recruitment, but there was a lot of bad things going on over at UW at the time. But shout out to them, national champions.
And reception leader at Ohio State.
Yeah, yep. And going to get, I don't know about G. Scott, but Egbuka and JT Tuimalau working themselves to be some pretty high up draft picks also. So that'd be cool to see. My Seahawks could use some help at basically every position, so I'd be happy to see them back in Seattle. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a little bit of a short show. As I said, we are transitioning to pre-recorded shows. We're not going to be doing lives throughout the remainder of the summer. However, to get your fix of college football mafia, please do tune in for the Big 12 Mafia show on Tuesdays, the Big Freaking Friday show, which I will pop on for every now and again on Fridays, obviously. And I believe Moen After Dark rolls along. It's Moen and Rock's cocktail drinking and ranting hour, which, if you haven't tuned in for, is an absolute blast. It's I won't call it PG. We'll call it PG-13-ish. But it's a lot of fun.
We'll call it YouTube MA.
YouTube MA, yep.
We got a new studio this week. We got a new studio set up. We got some new overlays.
Yep.
Should be fun. Definitely check us out. Again, tune in tomorrow. I believe you and Bomber are going to be there for the Big 12 Mafia show tomorrow.
Yep.
Make sure you're following the Big 10 Mafia show Twitter account. What is that? At Big 10 Mafia. And then we'll let you know when we're going to premiere the pre-recorded shows. We're going to cut them up and do some segments. So make sure you're staying tuned to that and staying tuned to our main at the CFP Mafia.
Yep, absolutely. You're going to have more pre-recorded stuff and members-only videos coming out throughout the summer. We appreciate you sticking with us, and we will see you on the next one. From myself, Moen, and everyone at the Big 10 Mafia, College Football Mafia, thank you, and have a good night.